and welcome once again to Coast to Coast People. George Best's sporting talent took him from a Belfast council estate to the pinnacle of success. Even Pelé described him as the world's greatest footballer, something that George doesn't deny, do you? But then it all began to go sour, and it's a story that he tells very frankly in his autobiography, The Good, the Bad and the Bubbly, which came out last month in paperback. We're talking about that in a moment. And also with us today, a good friend of Coast to Coast People, Graham Hurley. He's a television documentary maker and author, and his second novel, The Reaper, has also just hit the bookstores. And Graham, I should add as well, is a fanatical soccer supporter. So you boys, you're about the same age. Graham, what do you remember of George Best when he first hit the major soccer headlines?
I actually remember and there was a lot of press coverage about the time when you first went. I think you were 15, weren't you? Yeah. And you first arrived in Manchester, and you went to stay with Mrs. Fullaway, I think her name was. And there was endless press coverage of this little waif who had fantastic balance, and people were beginning to use words like genius. And my father, who was a fantastic football fan, said, "Oh, it's nonsense, nonsense, nonsense." And then he saw George playing and said, "He's right, he's a genius."
What do you remember about those days, George, when you were a young little 15-year-old, ripped from your mother's arms and transported to Manchester?
Very frightening. I mean, I'd never been further than 5 or 6 miles outside of Belfast before, so it was very, very frightening. But as Graham said, this dear old landlady, Mrs. Fullaway, looked after me like my second mum, and it was terrific. It was just so exciting, so much fun. I was doing something I loved. I was getting paid for it as well. And it was terrific. I loved it.
You did turn around and leave, though, after 24 hours.
I did go back after one day, yes. I was very, very homesick. I went with another young boy, and we sort of got together and decided we were two skinny little kids. We didn't figure we were going to make it in the big, bad world of football, so we dragged ourselves back to Belfast. But luckily, I changed my mind, and a couple of weeks later, I was back in Manchester.
The book, The Good, the Bad and the Bubbly, of course, deals with a lot of your off-the-field activities, but strangely enough, and I'm not a football fan, it was the chapters about football that most interested me and enthused me, and I could really understand somebody doing their job very well and being so enthusiastic about it that it was inspirational in a strange way, and it helped inspire everybody else as well, particularly when you were so little and you knew you had this talent, but it didn't stop you practicing constantly with any size ball you could find.
From as far back as I can remember, I always had a ball at my feet or carried it around. When I used to go shopping for my mum, I used to take a tennis ball with me and practice, try and chip it into waste bins and up against walls and stuff like that. It's what I try and instill in the kids. I do a lot of coaching all over the world, and that's what I try and teach the kids, or try to get over to them. Fitness, you can teach anyone to get fit, but it's the skills that you can improve on.
But you knew where to place a tennis ball on a doorknob.
Yeah, I had all sorts of little daft tricks that I used to practice, and it carried on in later years. When I finished training at Old Trafford, I used to stay on the pitch and try and hit the crossbar with a ball from 10 yards, then 15 yards. And as I say, I do that with the kids now when I coach them. I make sure that if we're training for 2 hours, they have a ball at their feet, and they're always doing something with the ball.
And who was it, a centre half, said to you? I'm sorry, I don't know the details because that doesn't sort of interest me, names and games, but you were about to start the second half of a match, and the centre half said to you, "I'm going to kick off, I'm going to kick this ball to you, would you score, because this game's so boring?" And you did.
Yeah, I did. I used to do things like that as well, even during games. I remember one game, one of my teammates said something similar. We were playing, it was a freezing cold day, and it was 0-0. And he said, "Look," he said, "when we kick off," he said, I'll pass the ball to you." He said, "Just take it through and score, and then, the game will be over then." And I did it, and I was lucky to be able to do things like that.
And a lot of opposing teams didn't like you for lots of reasons. You took some heavy kicks from so-called hard men.
Yeah, I probably deserved them, because I used to go out and on purpose try and make fools of them, because I figured if I got them angry, I was in charge, and most of them got very, very angry. And I still do it today, even in charity games I play and testimonial games. I have bets, my pals have a bet how many times I can stick it through the opponent's legs. in the game, it's a nutmeg, and it's the most devastating thing you can do to an opponent, and I still do it today.
Who was it who came up to you one day and said on the pitch, "I'm going to break your legs," and you said, "Oh," and then you kept running up to him and putting the ball through his legs, and then coming back and doing it again?
Oh, there was hundreds of them. We don't have long enough to tell you all the ones that said that.
And what was there was also a time when you managed to score a goal from the corner, bending the ball right round back into the net.
Yeah, I did it once against Ipswich when Bobby Robson was in charge there. And the following week we played them in a league match, in a cup match, and he had said that it was impossible. It was a fluke to score direct from a corner. So I took the first corner in the game that we got, and I actually hit the post at the far side. So if it had gone in, I'd probably walked off and retired then. I retired again. Yeah, it was something I tried, and that was something also that I tried in practice when my training was over.
And these footballers of today, you have quite a lot to say about them, how they're not allowed the individuality that Matt Busby gave you. He never told you to get your hair cut or have a shave or whatever. But all these boys coming off the coaches when you see them arriving, I mean, even I've seen this on Grandstand or whatever, and they all do look as if they've been painted with the same painter.
Yeah, I don't see why it matters, you know, how long someone's hair is or whether they've shaved or not. Is anything to do with what they do on the field. We were allowed to be individuals. We had a great side, but we had so many great individuals in the side, you know, with myself and Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton, Paddy Crane and Alex Stepney. I mean, we were all different off the field and all different on it, but at the same time we all played, you know, for the same cause, and that was Manchester United. And it just freaks me out to see players dress the same, talk the same, you know, play the same. I mean, Rodney Marsh, who's a good pal of mine, came out with a classic quote a few years back talking about the game, and he said it was a grey game played by grey people on grey days. I mean, that's sad to have to think of football like that, because it shouldn't be like that. It should be fun, it should be colourful, entertaining. The players should have flair and charisma. And
Is there anybody around at the moment who does have the flair and charisma?
Well, the unfortunate thing about this country, when we do find sportsmen who have flair and charisma, they crucify them, the media. I mean, Gaz is obviously the one around at the moment who has something on the field, but because of all the publicity of it, he's being crucified. And, you know, you tend to think sometimes it might be better off to walk away from it all, which is a sad reflection on British sport, I think.
Now, you say you coach youngsters, but why not put yourself into that mainframe and start coaching these players that are playing now, like Gazza, and helping? You've experienced all the traumas of being really in the public eye and being torn down by the press, as well as being built up by them, and you could help them through all those things.
The only problem is that you get caught out in the trauma yourself. And basically, I don't want to work from 9 to 5, which would be what it was. I love my life at the moment. I travel all over the world, coaching kids. I've just come back from the Middle East. I've coached in Malaysia, Hong Kong, America. I've just had an offer to go to South Africa and coach the coloured kids over there, which would be quite exciting, particularly with the changes that they're going through there. And I enjoy that. I love travelling, so I'd rather do that than sort of be stuck in one place. I'm still a typical Irishman. I'm a nomad. I like to keep moving.
What's the longest you can stay in a place if you're going over to Africa?
About 20 minutes usually.
Well, we're lucky to have you here for half an hour then. But in the book there's a good line that says, I like working with children, I can help them, and they can't harm me. That's quite sad. You feel that adults are going to attack you all the time?
Not attack. Well, a lot of times they do. That's why I get in so much trouble. Unfortunately, see, that's what I've said before about someone like Gascon who can't go anywhere. I still can't. I haven't played in the First Division for over 20 years, and I still have difficulties going in places where the public are. Most people are terrific, but there's always one or two that, you know, want to be Jack the Lad and show off. Which is, again, is sad, because when I'm in America, I have some friends over there who are sportsmen, and it's lovely to walk in a bar with them. No matter, even the opposition, because they're great athletes, they love them, because they're stars, and it's nice to go to America and turn on your TV and see players who haven't played for 20 years still making TV commercials and making good money, and being loved because of what they did on the field. I find it different here. So when I coach the kids, it's lovely because I get a lot of response from them, and it's a nice compliment to me that kids still want to be coached by me, because obviously most of them have never seen me play, so they're getting it from their parents and sometimes probably their great grandparents, I suppose. And it's lovely because I get a lot of response from them. And I enjoy it. It's great.
You've led a fairly quiet life the last 2 or 3 years. You haven't been hitting the headlines and things, and yet mention George Best and people always say, oh, will he turn up? Oh, he's into fighting and girls and boozing. And why won't that image lie down?
Because there again, I don't want to keep going on about the media, but they won't let it die down. But there again, we've been talking about the kids. It doesn't matter to the kids. because they're
Yes.
only interested in the football side of it.
I understand that, but George, in the book, The Good, the Bad and the Bubbly, and there was, the football chapters are great, but you do put, at least half of the book is about the bad old George Best, the naughty boy, so you do stick the label back on yourself again.
I suppose it depends on your concept of badness. I mean, what I was doing was, I was doing the same as every healthy, normal human being was doing at the same time.
But more often.
Just a little bit more, yeah. I went out with more girls, I drank more beer, I had more fast cars, more accidents, but I was just, I consider myself a normal, healthy human being. But because I was an athlete, I wasn't supposed to do it. I don't understand why. But I think what it was later on, when I had the problems with alcohol, that's really when the bad times. I mean, you can't go around smashing cars up and get in fights and going to prison for drunk driving or drink driving. It's not nice. I don't like it, you know. I'm sorry it happened, but that's why I put it down, because I had someone ask me recently that, you know, asked me why I boasted about going out with so many girls. And I don't boast about it, I talk about it.
It's the truth.
It's the truth, yeah. So I don't see why I should hide it, because it's not boastful. It's just, if someone asks me a question, I answer it.
Well, how much does your son Callum know about this image, the bad boy image of George Best?
He knows about it, but it doesn't bother him, because I'm just his dad to him. He's coming over in a couple of weeks to see me. And there again, it's nice because he's only interested in the football side. You know, he's all excited. He just scored his first goal in a football match at school in America, so he's all excited. So the other side of it, he might know about, but he never talks about it.
He's inherited your skills, has he?
Looks like it. He's a natural athlete. He's very good at all sports, and it's nice he's in America because he gets a chance to play most of them.
You have, there's a lovely, funny chapter in the book about when you were young and had money pouring out of your ears and it was all so exciting, and you had this amazing house built with everything was electrically run, so that you could press a button and a television appeared, and that the bath was so big, the tanks in the loft weren't large enough to fill it.
Yes,
so
my wonderful designer, yeah, my architect forgot to put in tanks big enough to fill the bath, so I had about a 4-foot sunken bath that filled up to 2 inches, so I never ever used it. Yeah, it was amazing, all these gadgets, and the only thing he forgot to tell me also was that every time a plane went over, everything electric in the house went off. I don't know why. The curtains were opening and closing. The TV was disappearing up the chimney. The stereo was coming off and on. It was total madness. So I stayed for about 9 months, I think, and headed back to dear old Mrs. Fullaway where it was safe.
who lives in that house now?
I don't know who's in it, but I know it's just been sold for about 600,000. So I wish I'd kept it. Yeah.
Gosh, how much did you build it for?
£40,000.
And that was a fortune.
Oh, in those days,
20 years ago.
that was with the plot of land as well. So
Really?
it was a fortune in those days. But and that's another thing people say to me: don't you wish you should have done this and done that? If you'd have kept your house, if you'd have kept your cars that you had, you'd have made a fortune. But it's all relevant, you know. I still have a wonderful lifestyle and enjoy myself. So I know a lot of friends of mine in the game who are struggling at the moment. So I consider myself very, very lucky.
And is your personal life nice and calm now?
Well, you said yourself that I haven't been hitting the headlines, so I suppose it must be nice and quiet and calm. I've got a wonderful lady who keeps me in tow and keeps my feet on the ground. And we spend most of the time travelling, which is lovely. So I keep out of the way, so that's why there's no headlines. Nobody knows where I am most of the time.
Well, it's very, very nice to meet you, George. Do you have time to read much whilst you're travelling on these long plane journeys here, there and everywhere?
Yeah, I'm an avid reader. I love books.
Are you?
Yeah.
Would you like international thrillers?
Yes.
Oh, this is a relief.
That's
your moment.
Yes, right.
This is your moment. We can sell you this book. Actually, I've just read this, and it is very good. Graham Hurley, our other guest today, has written this lovely book. We'll talk about this a bit in a moment, because you are just this second back from the Falkland Islands, well, in the last 7 days anyway, where you've been out filming a new series of documentaries called In Time of War. So just tell us what that's all about.
Well, next year is the 10th anniversary of the Falklands War. It started and finished, indeed, in 1982. And it's an obvious idea, but I've made lots and lots of war films for ITV before. And I put the idea up last year that perhaps we should be thinking in terms of a series to commemorate the 10th anniversary. The only problem was that there were at least 5 other series being made. So we therefore had to come up with something a bit new. Now what we've done is to come up with a series that is 6 half hours, and it's almost defined by what it's not. It's not the A to Z history of the war. It's not the kind of program or programs that tries to second guess all the political issues and whether this battle was fought properly or that battle was fought properly. What we try to do is to take 6 individuals and carefully select them so they give you a perspective over all various kind of areas of the war.
Who are the individuals?
They range from a man called Robert Fox, who was the BBC radio reporter, to the Padre, David Cooper, from Tupara. There's a man called Ian Gardner, who was a commando. There's a widow. They're the parents of the youngest kid to be killed at sea. So it's really, a very wide perspective. And I then decided that what we would try to do would be to form relationships with these people so that it was a relationship of total trust, and to make 6 individual profiles, no commentary, try and get very close to them, and to come up with 6 candid accounts of what that war meant to them. And it's worked very well. And what we've come out with is, I think, a series with shelf life. In other words, you can take this series, you can put it on the shelf, and it will be as relevant in 20 years' time as it is now.
So it'll reflect all wars and any wars. Is that
Yes,
why you
that's
called
right.
it In Time of War
In Time
rather
of
than
War, yes.
Falklands 10 Years On or
Yes.
something? Mm.
There's a title sequence that really tries to explain that, and it really keys the whole thing. And I think if we look at the monitor, we can probably see it.
Just the opening titles, and that's about all you've had time to edit at the moment since when you just got back with
That's
the material.
right. That's right.
And it's strange watching those pictures that in retrospect they are more moving and immediate than they were at the time when everyone was in shock and couldn't believe what they were seeing on the news.
Yes, there's something very special about the images. It was a very low-tech war. It wasn't a war fought by and large with missiles, although clearly missiles came into it. It was a war in the end of the bullet, the hand grenade, the boot. Men walked for considerable distances, and the premium was on all those things that mattered in past wars. The premium was on endurance. And the closer we got to these people that we selected, the more that similar experiences came out. And the closer we got, the more we became aware that what they were offering to share with us was that horrible dark secret, which is the middle of every war, which is the experience and the secret of the battlefield. And the battlefield is a horrible place. And as technology develops, it becomes more horrible. And we began to find points of common interest between them. One, for instance, was that they all, to a man, people that we selected who'd been to the war, this is not the widows and the mothers and the fathers, when they came back, found it tremendously difficult to re-enter society. I mean, they had a 6-week voyage, most of them, on the way back. But they came back to a world of rail strikes, of union disputes, of concern about green issues. And they began to wonder, what on earth has that got to do with us, with what we've been through? And there was a terrific sense of alienation. And the overwhelming irony was that at the end of the day, these people felt friendless, they felt isolated, they felt that they couldn't communicate with anyone except one other bunch of people. And the only other sort of person who understood what they'd been through was the enemy. And they found themselves closer to the Argentinians than to anyone else.
Now, is that true, though, in any war? Because there's been a lot of this criticism recently, particularly since the Gulf War, that everybody has to be counselled afterwards, whether you're a soldier, sailor, RAF, wife, widow, child. And in the Second World War, the First World War, and in the Falklands, you didn't get that kind of counselling. So isn't that something that they would have, everybody faces wherever you are, in any war?
Yes, I think, again, in most circumstances, one of the films is a film about the captain of one of the boats that went down. And of all the kinds of loss that can happen in war, that's a particular kind of loss. To lose your ship is like, his quote is, losing an entire regiment in one day, in 1 hour in this case. And here is a man who's lost his fighting machine, his home, his reputation, and in this case 20 of his friends, 20 of his colleagues, his comrades in arms. And he found it terribly hard to adapt. And by his own account, and this is a well-qualified, highly trained man, it was 2.5 years before he was able to confront life on anything like normal terms. And that's an argument for exactly what you say, for a much more developed scheme whereby people can be rehabilitated.
What about the Falklands themselves? Did you know them before the war? Most people didn't and thought they were off somewhere in the Outer Hebrides.
I got news for you, they're not.
Aha, right. Did you know them pre-war?
Yes, I've been there once before. I went in March to do the research, but before the war I didn't go at all, no. I mean, I knew nothing.
So do you know how they've changed since the war, how it's affected the island itself,
yes,
islands themselves and the people?
The war has been a crossroads. It's, again, one of those ironies of history. Had we not fought the war, and you can make out a case for saying that the war was the result of political failure, shouldn't we have fought the war, but given that we had to fight the war, given that they would no longer have been English had we not fought the war, they've been Argentinian, then what you also have to accept is that the islands have completely changed. The way of life that they went there for has gone, or is in the process of going. They have things like roads now.
International airport.
They have an international airport that will take, wide-bodied jets. They have crime, which never existed before. They lock their doors. That never happened before. I mean, the 20th century has arrived with a bump. No adolescence, straight into it. And I think quite a lot of them find this very disquieting.
You walked a lot of the islands, I know, when you were researching the film and before. Are there the ghosts on the battlefields? Do you feel, is there anything left? Can you picture it, hear the cries?
It's incredibly cold, I tell you that. There are lots of minefields left. So in that respect, it's very hard to avoid the evidence of the war. The major battlefields are in a little ring west of Stanley, and you can walk them all in a day. And if you're lucky enough, as I was, to be paid to find out all there was to find out about the war, to do all the reading, to meet the men, to get into their heads, and then to have the opportunity to walk the battlefields, to get behind the set, as it were, was remarkable. It's a countryside without trees, and it's a countryside without people. And consequently, it's very easy to walk all day and see nobody. And if you do that with your head full of what happened here, where the enemy were, where our lads came from, to know some of them, on first-name terms, was a privilege, and that was extraordinary, yeah.
When do we hope to see this series?
It begins to transmit, I think, 7:30 on Tuesdays from week 5, which is February next year.
February next year. We've got about a minute to say, gosh, you must read Graham's book too, which is actually about how the IRA almost scuttled the British task force on their way down to the Falklands.
Footnote to the Falklands War, the so far unpublicised story of how the two major ships which left on the 5th of April from Portsmouth. That's,
Invincible and Hermes.
Hermes and Invincible. You've read the book, obviously.
I have. I was there too, of course.
One of them was nearly sunk by the IRA, by the Provisionals, who had a cell in Portsmouth. It was a very close-run thing, Fern. But you'd be glad to know that we won.
I know that we won, so that was all right. But anyway, so that's Graham Hurley's book, Reaper, and George Best's book, The Good, the Bad and the Bubbly, and both of them are excellent. I shall swap them now, and you can have one each, all right?
Thank you.
George Best, thank you very, very much indeed for coming.
Pleasure.
It's lovely to meet you. And Graham, thank you. Look forward to watching In Time of War.
Thank you very much.
From all of us, bye-bye. Look forward to being Coast to Coast people next week. Bye-bye.